Now today we're beginning a new series entitled Destinations. And ultimately our game plan for this series is this. When it comes to the tagline, if you would, in life you win or lose by the path that you choose. In life you win or you lose by the path that you choose. Now, just to kind of put some handles on where we're going today. I grew up in the Houston area, south of Houston. And so when I was in high school and even early college, there was this place. It's no longer there anymore. It's actually a big neighborhood right now. And it was right across the street from what we would consider the eighth wonder of the world, the Astrodome. I don't know why we call it the eighth wonder of the world, but that's just what we as Houstonians thought was cool, right? But there was a place right across the street that was called Astroworld. It was one of the Six Flags amusement parks. And for me, I loved Astroworld. And here's what I loved about it. There was this ride that you could go, and it was the big swings. You get on the swings and it just kind of sends you going. And there's no like loops, there's no nothing. But the thing I loved about it is it was right next to the frozen lemonade stand. So you could go get a frozen lemonade and go get in line. And it was the great culmination of a fun day of roller coasters and all the crazy, right? And so I would love to go and grab a frozen lemonade and stand in line. And I know some people are like, you like those swings? It makes me puke. I'm like, yes, and give me a frozen lemonade. I'll drink it while I'm going. It's so relaxing. I don't know. Just pray for me, right? But towards the end of every single time I was there, there would be one of the things I would love to do. So towards the end of the day, I would always try to find a map. And you know what the map would tell me is it would basically say, you are here. And once you figured out where you are, you then can figure out where you need to go, correct? So I would always love the map. Now, when it comes to malls, when it comes to shopping, I am probably one of the most inefficient shoppers there are. Like, I've got a list and I go one by one by one by one by one on the list. And it could be like way on this side of the store and then the dairies, and then you got to go, like, I'm just inefficient. But when it came to this, like, I can tell you right where I was and right where I need to go. But you know, there's been times where we've been at the zoo, or there's been times that we're in the mall, or there's times where we're at an amusement park. And we go to one of these signs and we see where we are. And then we begin to think this simple question: how did I get here? This is on the other side of the park. How did I get here already? Or how am I ever going to get from here to where I need to be? We begin to look at it from the perspective of, how did I get here? You know, North Tarrant, over the last several weeks, the last several months, I've come to grips with this simple question. I've had so many people that in the course of them trying to evaluate life and evaluate where they're at right now, they've come to the point of asking, how did I get here? I mean, we turned the leaf of 2019 and we went into 2020 and we had a great job. Everything was going well. We thought things were tracking, up and to the right. And man, we were next in line for a promotion. And then all of a sudden the world stopped, and instead of next in line for a promotion, right now I'm sitting in a place where I don't even know the certainty of my job tomorrow. Not only that, but the uncertain reality of my work life has caused financial instability, where we're sitting here saying, we used to love paying for all the toys that we really didn't think we could afford, but man, we needed them and we knew one day we would get ahead. Well, now we find ourselves looking at these toys that we're still paying for, and maybe some that we're not even playing with. And we're having to juggle, is this worth not paying an electricity bill? Is this worth, what do we do in the midst? How did we get here? Financial struggles have left us looking at our kids. Parenting is a completely different world when you're sharing a schoolhouse and an office with the place you reside. You're left looking at your kids and wondering, what in the world is going on? Do I even want to be a parent? Needless to say, when it comes to relationships, the spouses that we have, There's been questions where we've been asking, how did I get here? We had a good marriage. Everything was going well. And then it all of a sudden just went awry. I found that over the last year, the pandemic, if you would, was a remarkable magnifying glass on the foundations of everything we held true. And it showed in many instances there's cracks in certain foundations to which we're waking up in a new year and we're saying, how did I get here? We find ourselves in a destination. We find ourselves in a destination that maybe we're not proud of. A destination that we're sitting here saying, wait a second, this isn't okay. Like everything was going well and all of a sudden I find myself in this destination and I'm pulling my hair out thinking, how did I get here? So how do we change our destination? Well, we resolve to make better decisions. We resolve to do things better. We're going to spend more time. We're going to do better things. And so to change our destinations, don't we decide that we've got to make better decisions? And while it is true, your decisions do determine the direction and the quality of your life. The decisions you make, they do determine the direction and the quality of your life. The decisions that we make are valuable when it comes to figuring out the destinations we're going to. The other thing I found is this, is every decision we make is a result of a belief that we hold. Every decision that we make is a result of a belief that we hold. So we get back to this idea that we found ourselves in a destination because of decisions that we've made. And ultimately, if we dig a little deeper, we find that the reason we make the decisions we make is the beliefs that we hold. Point in case. Several years ago, I was having dinner with an individual that he was a good friend of mine. He was a guy that we did a lot of things together. We laughed together. We played together. We enjoyed life together. We were sitting at a fast food restaurant. And this was probably about 7, 8, 10 years ago. We're sitting at this fast food restaurant. I remember, I don't know how this came to be, but he's about 20 years my elder. And he piped up and he goes, Scott, you know what, as we're eating French fries and drinking Cokes, he goes, Scott, you know what? I used to be as skinny as you. But it's funny how over time you gain 5 to 10 pounds a year every year. It adds up. And I'm sitting here eating my fries thinking, I don't know that this is a wise decision, right? The belief is that, you know what? It really doesn't matter. I can eat what I want, so I make the decision that I'm going to gain 5 to 10 pounds a year. And then I find myself in a destination 20 years later. You do the math. I'm not going to worry you on that. Another buddy of mine, I was talking to him about what we're talking about today, and he goes, that's funny because my first wife, here's what she believed. She believed skinny tastes better. So in everything we would do, we would be getting Easter candy. She's like, yeah, but skinny tastes better. And I'm like, wait a second, but I just want chocolate. But no, but skinny tastes better. So they had no candy in their house, and the destination was an absolutely unhappy house. I think. But our beliefs tend to determine the decisions that we make. And the decisions we make determine the destination. I mean, we could go all day talking about what are your financial beliefs. When it comes to your financial future hopes and dreams compared to what you want to spend today, what beliefs do you have? Because your beliefs might be that, man, I need to save for the future, but you're not really saving for the future. That's the destination you want, but you make decisions based upon, oh, money grows on trees. Maybe the belief when it comes to your marriage is one that, you know what, right now I need to work so that I can provide for my wife. And my wife is on the other side saying, I just want you home. And there's a difference there. And all of a sudden you're working from the house and you're realizing that we forgot how to communicate. We share an office together. We're together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The decisions I'm making, they're not becoming of a happy marriage. And the destination we're at right now is, oh my goodness, do I even know my spouse? You see, the beliefs that we have determine the decisions that we make. And the decisions we make determines the destination we go to. It's all good and well to try to change the decisions, but if we don't dig deep into the beliefs, I find more often than not, we don't have the courage to carry out the right decisions that we need to make. So how do we get to the bottom of our beliefs? That's a deep question, right? Yeah, grab some coffee. Let's have a seat. Let's talk about this. But I think when it comes to discerning how we've gotten to where we are with our beliefs, one of the things we've got to think through on this perspective, what we find is when it comes to this, once we've made a decision to go towards our destination, we lose control. Once we've made a decision, so we have a belief and we make a decision. The decision is, I'm just going to eat Whataburger 3 times a week, every single week. I lose control of what my waistline looks like, right? I make the decision that I'm going to come home every day at 5 p.m. and I'm going to make sure that I spend time with my family. I lose control, which is a good thing, but to a certain degree, I lose control of what happens at work because I'm choosing, my belief is that my family is a valuable thing. Once we make the decision, that's the point that we lose control of destination. And you've seen this, you modify behaviors if we're not careful. We know the destination we're going, so we try to modify the behaviors to get us to where we need to be. So, how do we figure out our beliefs? Well, here's just a couple of thoughts. Our beliefs come from the voices we listen to. The voices that we listen to. For me personally, I heard on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, but one of the things I'm trying to do over the course of this year, especially over the course of this week and the last week and the next week, is I'm trying to take an audit of all the voices that I'm listening to. Because I found that the voices I'm listening to, they directly affect the beliefs that I hold. And especially in light of the last 13 months, I found that the voices I've been listening to in many instances have been competing with my time alone with God. And as followers of Jesus, can I just encourage you? When it comes to us really leaning in and listening to a loving Heavenly Father who wants to encourage you, it takes the time for us to pause the television, to pause social media, and to really be still and to know that God is in control. In fact, I was reading the other day a book by Mark Batterson talking about it's about listening to the voice of God. And one of the things he mentioned, he said, God could come in a giant storm. God could come in a loud thundering voice, but God chooses more often to work through a whisper. Because there's nothing more intimate than the whispers of somebody. You lean in and you get the chance to hear. And in order for us to hear the whisper, oftentimes we've got to silence all of the loud voices in our life. So our beliefs are oftentimes tied to the voices that we listen to, but they're also tied to the experiences we've had. The experiences that we've had, maybe it's from your upbringing. As a child, you had a difficult upbringing. Maybe you had a father wound, a mother wound. Maybe you had tensions and struggles growing up. Maybe you were picked on as a child. Maybe you got into your first job and everything was going well, and then all of a sudden you lost your job and things just went awry, and all of a sudden the experiences that you've had have played into your ability to trust an employer, to trust people around the table. Maybe you're dealing with a marriage, and because of a broken marriage, it's causing you difficulty to trust. Your experiences lead to the beliefs that we have. And here's something I found is that we all go into new seasons of life, we all go into new realities with expectations. We've got expectations for a new year. We've got expectations for a new season, a new chapter, a new job, a new season of life. I mean, the expectations when you bring home that first child, it's like, oh, everything's going to be great until they don't sleep through the night. And then you're like, what am I doing? Like my expectations were, I've got a beautiful child and I will sleep through the night. The experiences were, homie, don't play that. Right? We have expectations in almost every season of life. But those expectations oftentimes differ from the experiences that we face. We have expectations of a grander life. We got expectations of a beautiful year, and the experiences leave us wanting, leave us curious. And when our expectations and our experiences, when there's a gap there, it's natural for us as humans to put suspicion into the gap. For us to begin to get suspicious about everything. suspicious about friends, suspicious about relationships, suspicious about jobs, suspicious about you name it, because suspicion feeds several different emotions that tend to control our responses in life. It fuels greed and jealousy. It fuels guilt and anger and fear. Suspicion fuels insecurity. And so when we find that our expectations and our experiences don't measure up, we take a lot of greed or jealousy or insecurity into every arena of life. So what do we do with this? I really believe that in life we win or lose by the decisions we make or the decisions we choose. We win or lose based on the decisions that we choose. And the problem is for us to get to the bottom of those decisions, we've got to figure out what are the beliefs and where do we want to go? What are the beliefs and how do we keep from saying, here we go again? And so suspicion, greed, jealousy, insecurity, fear, guilt, anger, those have the potential of robbing our decision-making process. You know, it's interesting because I really believe for us to do what God's called us to do, it involves us to change the way we think. You see, changed thinking leads to a changed life. Changed thinking, changing the way we think about the struggles we have, changing the way we think about the gap between expectations and experiences. Changed thinking leads to a changed life. And here's where I get this. Paul, who's a remarkable guy, Paul, who it's arguably the most, he had the most say in the spread of Christianity as we see it today. In fact, Paul, he saw it his mission to go all across the Mediterranean rim, to go all across that part of the world and to plant churches and begin to create churches. In fact, he wrote a letter to the church in Rome, which is some 1,000 miles away from the site of the crucifixion. And so we're talking 30, maybe 40 years after the crucifixion, Paul is writing a letter to Christians in Rome. In the midst of the Roman deities, in the midst of everything that was going on in Rome, there was a church there with followers of Jesus that were excited about figuring life out, even in some very tumultuous times. And listen to what Paul says about this idea of changed thinking. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, he says, do not conform to the patterns of this world. Do not conform. In other words, don't find yourself in the rhythm of life. There is a rhythm around you, and if we're not careful, we're just going to get sucked into the rhythm, and we're just going to become another cog in the wheel. He's saying, do not conform to the pattern. Do not conform to the rhythms of this world, but be transformed. I like that word transformed because today you don't have to go far to find a TV show, a reality show, if you will, of individuals flipping a house. They are transforming a house. They're taking a house that used to be dilapidated, and you go and you look at the house, you think, there's no way you could fix this house, right? And then they send the family off, and then they move the bus or whatever they do, and they walk in, and they're just mesmerized by the physical change of the house. It's almost as if you can't even tell it was the old house. And this is the same word, this idea of completely to renovate. But be renovated, but renovate your mind, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, daily waking up and processing the way you're thinking, processing your thoughts, processing your actions, processing everything that's going on through this idea that, okay, God, I trust you in everything. God, this is a belief I want to have for my marriage. I'm struggling with this. I still think that the world revolves around me, but I realize that that's not healthy. So God, teach me to change the way I think about those around me. God, I realize that I wish money grew on trees. The good news is you can get credit cards a dime a dozen. So God, this is not healthy for me long term, But God, change the way I think. I really want to provide an incredible financial future for my wife and my kids. And right now I find myself trapped with the payments of the day. God, teach me to change the way I think. You see, it's not that I have to begin doing things differently. Because without the belief, the courage to do things differently is going to be very difficult. But instead, it's that I have to begin thinking differently. I have to begin thinking differently about the way I approach the areas of my life. You see, the destinations we find ourselves in, they're a product of the decisions that we've made, yes. But the decisions we've made are a product of the beliefs that we've held. Some of them for a long time, some of them are very deep within. But to get to the bottom of the beliefs, it revolves around us changing the way we think. And here's why this is such a big deal to me. Here's why this is so valuable to me. Is because today it is real easy for us, without doing an audit of the voices we listen to, without doing an audit of what's going on in our life, it's real easy for us to get caught up in the rhythm of our culture and to get very passionate or very excited about certain things or certain realities. But when it comes to following Jesus, it involves us thinking the way Jesus would think. It involves us getting into Mark and getting into John and getting into Matthew and Luke and saying, yeah, I put those in completely random order because that's how I like to read them. Anyway, but it involves us asking the question, thinking through, how did Jesus respond in life? Because here's what Paul saw in the life of Jesus, and this is why it's so valuable. Listen to how he closes off Romans 12:2. He says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. Renew your mind. Renovate by renewing your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve God's will. God's destination, if you would. God's future hopes and dreams for you. You know, I really believe that God has remarkable plans for your life. That God believes wholeheartedly. He sent His Son so that you can live and enjoy life and relationships, so you can enjoy being a parent. That He's got an incredible destination in store for you. And as we transform the way we think, then we'll be able to test and approve what God's will, His good, His pleasing, and His perfect will. This isn't something that happens overnight. I realize that. This isn't something that we're just going to say, okay, sounds good, check, what's next? But no, Tarrant, I believe that God has got remarkable things in store for you. And even when everything around us, when a magnifying glass looks at the foundation of our marriage and we begin to say, there's no way that this marriage can make it through, it is in those moments that when we begin to transform the way we think about forgiveness, that we begin to see marriage from a different perspective. When we begin to transform the way we think about parenting and the role kids have in our lives, when we throw the magnifying glass out and begin to say, God, give me your eyes, give me your wisdom, because I am messing this world up, you'll find that following Jesus really makes your life better. Your marriage will be better. Your decision making will be better. And beyond that, you'll live a life with less regret. Less suspicion, less anger, guilt, envy. You see, when we begin to change the way we think, we begin to see what God's destination, God's will, God's perfect and pleasing destination is for each one of us. And whether you believe that I can eat whatever I want and I'll stay skinny, 5 to 10 pounds a year isn't that big of a deal, or whether you believe that skinny just tastes better. Regardless of where we land, from eating to finances, I believe that if we'll change the way we think, we'll begin to see life from a new perspective. And it'll take time. It'll take energy. But it starts with us taking an audit of the voices we listen to and thinking through that filter as to, Jesus, how would you have me think? Would you pray with me? God, I love you, and I thank you so much for the fact that you're a big God. God, I confess, I can easily communicate the ideas that we need to change the way we believe, but God, it can be difficult at times. God, it is a lot easier to try to keep up with the proverbial Joneses than it is to really try to investigate and examine my own beliefs. God, it is a lot easier to turn on the TV than it is to turn off the TV and to lean into what you have to say. God, it is a lot easier to live from a perspective of suspicion than to live from a perspective of trust. So God, I do pray that in here that you would grant us eyes to see as you see, and that you would give us the ears to do as you say. God, give us the eyes to begin to see the world as you see. God, change the way we think so that we can process life through your lens. God, I confess I need you for that. I need you more than ever. God, change the way I think when it comes to my neighbors, when it comes to my marriage, when it comes to my parenting. God, help me to see life the way you see it. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.